Cayden Lindstrom spoke with Mark Masters of TSN today about his injury, and it has a lot of Habs and NHL fans pretty frustrated and very skeptical about picking him high in the draft. We got to get into all of his comments. Plus, we have to get into something Don Waddell, GM of the Columbus Blue Jackets, said, how some teams around him are looking to trade down. Could that be Montreal? That plus much more on this episode of Habs Digest. And we're going to start the video with something a bit different, Jesse, and this is on the Ivan Demidov front, though. And this is from Elliotte Friedman. Now, on 32 Thoughts yesterday, he said something that actually I think we find kind of funny. And he said this. Oh, no, it's not that. Let me go over here. This is the right thing. Apologies. Word around the league is that there's another team out there that wants Demidov really badly that is spreading all of these nasty rumors about him. Look, I just gotta find this hilarious, Jesse, and I've actually seen a lot of people pointing fingers at the Montreal Canadiens, and I don't know why. I don't know why that's the assumption, but I just find it kind of funny that whether it's Montreal or another team, they're going around like, oh, Demidov puts ketchup on a steak or something like that. I don't know what it is. This is kind of ridiculous in my mind, but I just find it kind of hilarious as we get closer and closer to the draft.
It's Don Waddell. He's been a busy man. Right? Like, I don't know, this doesn't strike me as something that Kent Hughes would really do, right? You know, it just seems like with so much access, you know, to different scouting information, just seems so interesting. Like, what is this, right? Like, what we're seeing, the draft is getting so close now. The mind games, we just got to expect them to wrap up from here, folks. It's getting out of hand, though. The fact that, you know, a team would, because Friedman, that's a pretty reputable source. You know, saying that actually some team is actively saying negative things about this player. Like, I get wanting this player, right? But kind of going that route, like, for me, it's like, it's not Chicago, because if they want, you know, Demidov, they're able to pick him second over, right? Yeah. So is it for Beck, you know, with Anaheim? Is it Waddell? Because I don't know, maybe I'm just a homer, right? But I just don't see it as being something Kent Hughes would really do. But anyway, the slander just needs to stop.
And like, look, there's, like you said, they can see him now. They can go in person. He measured in at 6 feet and 1/2 inch. He measured in at 1.5 inches taller than he was originally listed, and about 10 pounds heavier. Teams are loving that. So anyway, some interesting stuff in the Demidov front. What do you guys think about that? Do you think it's Kent Hughes? I want to hear everyone down below. Yes or no? Is it Kent Hughes or not? Or Jeff Gordon or someone? Nick Bobrov spreading
these. Cooking.
Yeah, Kent is cooking up the case against Ivan Demidov. No, we're gonna move on though, because we got some other interesting stuff to talk about. And this is the screenshot I accidentally showed at the top of the show. So, but this is the Don Waddell thing. So he revealed something interesting. Now we're actually going to get to this screenshot, and Don Waddell, clearly a busy man if he's spreading rumors against Demidov. No, not going to make that speculation. But he said regarding trading back at the 2024 draft, he said that some teams, even around us, are talking about trying to move back a little bit if you're going to get a nice asset with it. And I find this interesting, Jesse, because we're going to get into some Cayden Lindstrom stuff a bit later. I mean, it is what it is on that front, and we'll talk about the fan reaction. But you start to wonder, right? We've seen Guhle being like slightly more linked to Montreal. He's kind of climbing some people's rankings, and Montreal picks right after Columbus. And, you know, I don't see a world where Chicago is looking to trade down ahead of him. Maybe Anaheim, you never know, right? Maybe if they think they can get Salayev later. But the idea is out there. Marco D'Amico's the one that retweeted this, and of course he writes about the Habs at Montreal Hockey Now. What are the odds that you think Montreal could trade back? Now, we've heard other people say, I believe it was Arber, and if not him, some other reporters said that they absolutely do not expect Montreal to trade down because they can just take whoever they want at 5. But now that there's so much uncertainty introduced as we get towards the draft, and it really could be anyone, I think once teams start to get a feel for who the people around them are probably going to take, it actually wouldn't surprise me.
For me, though, just this whole unpredictability just lends to itself of not wanting to trade back, because it seems like you're only trading back if you know for sure what the other teams are selected, because we can still get our guy over here, right? Mm-hmm. But there's just so many moving parts. For sure, in some ways, it is taking shape a little bit more. Demidov into maybe that top 3, but other than that, it seems like a complete crapshoot. And otherwise, you know, Mac and Celebrini going first overall, right? So for me, it's like I really feel, and I think a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans, you know, want the Habs to stand pat. You know, if anything, we want to trade up or use our 26 overall package that to kind of move up at all costs, just because I feel like the Habs, they don't want to be here in this type of position again. So while they're here, it makes sense to maximize, you know, get in, grab what you can, make sure it's of highest value, because you might not be picking this high again, at least for the foreseeable future, right? Like being in that top 5 definitely helps a lot. And I think that a lot of moves that Kent did, like trading Sean Monahan, was to get the best possible selection at this draft for this year. So I think that that's really valuable to him. For that reason, he's really holding on to that.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the value of just picking whoever you want, that's worth a lot as well, because there's never a guarantee. And I mean, look, if you have a handshake agreement with another GM and they take the player that you shook hands saying they wouldn't take, that would introduce some vitriol, but it probably won't happen, but I guess it's not impossible, right? But yeah, I think just taking the pick at 5 makes the most sense. And Don Waddell, I mean, look, he can say kind of whatever he wants. And I'm sure it's true. I'm sure Kent Hughes has probably discussed it, but it doesn't mean it's going to happen. And I just don't see a world where it does. I think it can make sense, like I said at the top. But look, if you got your pick at 5, your pick of the litter, and you truly think a lot of people like around that same level, you just take the pick at 5 and you move on. But I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down below too. Could this be Montreal? I don't think it is, but hey, you never really know. Final topic. Oh boy. So, we discussed Cayden Lindstrom's injury a little bit, to put it lightly, I suppose. But Cayden Lindstrom spoke with Mark Masters recently, and while this isn't necessarily a groundbreaking update on his injury, it has a lot of fans kind of worried because of the way he sort of phrased everything that happened. And I'll get into the first quote I have here. Let's bring it up. He said he's asked about his injury. He said it was a disc herniation. Those things take a long time to heal. Kind of affected the nerve in my leg. Gave me a little bit of sciatica. Nerve stuff takes a while to heal, but I'm feeling great now. He went on to say that every team asked me about the back injury. I just told them the truth. As far as I know, they didn't have any worries about it at all. And not having any worries, I don't know, but I guess they're not going to tell him, oh, that sucks, bro. Like, they're not going to say that to his face. The sciatica nerve pain in his leg is not necessarily surprising with a herniated disc in the back. I don't think that in and of itself is necessarily too bad. Overall, this interview with Mark Masters was a little interesting, Jesse. I got a strange vibe from it, but the one thing that I'm noticing is that fans of any team who are in the Cayden Lindstrom sweepstakes, whether that's Columbus or Montreal, even Anaheim or general NHL fans, are saying like, yeah, I wouldn't touch him now, which I think is very interesting because before it was just Corey Pronman saying it was a disc herniation. And now you got Lindstrom saying in the playoffs he was not near 100%. He's probably only going to be back to 100% mid-late July. He said he struggled a lot with rehab, stuff like this. He had nerve pain in his leg. Does this change your opinion of him at all? Because to me, no. Because honestly, again, I trust the teams with the medical files. They're going to analyze this stuff. And if they truly believe it's not going to come back, whatever, right? I'm not in a position to make a decision over them. But I can't help but watching this interview, I couldn't help but feel like I'm just starting to be less sure about picking this guy and maybe more sure about a guy like Tej.
I just feel like, he's a late riser already. He kind of came out of the blue already. To miss that much hockey, to be a late riser because of the injury and still be mocked up so high with all the information that these scouts, analysts have, I have to feel like they're not overly worried about this injury. Mm-hmm. For sure, it is a little bit worrisome when you hear he's talking about being a multi-sport athlete, and he actually needed to stop his boxing training completely because of the sciatica. And you could tell he was kind of nervous talking about it. He knew it would be a kind of a point of contention, right? Where people really read into that a lot. But he also mentioned he's training hard, right? Yeah. 3 to 4 times a week. But we're adding, kind of the other side of it, right? Because I think, there's not too much to worry there. He's training hard. He's mocked up this high with all this information. There's so much money that goes into that. No way that he is this high if it's really that much of a worry. And I know in the interview, he kind of comes across a little bit kind of carefree, but I kind of take it as more of just not taking yourself too seriously, happy-go-lucky sort of thing. And I would say that definitely would fit with Slav, in the way that he talks about just loving the game, loving the sport, fitting with Caufield. I definitely see him fitting in with just the room, sometimes not taking yourself too seriously. For sure, there's that time for accountability, but being able to take things light as well. So, so I did like that aspect. But for me, I'm not overly worried. I think that injuries, it's part of the game. And now with all the help that they have, I think that he's going to come back even stronger than ever.
Well, that doesn't bode well for my very reactionary take, but it is what it is. I think you're right. There's nothing in this that made me drastically change whether I would or whether I wouldn't draft Cayden Lindstrom, but it seems to be having a big effect on a lot of fans. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to leave your thoughts on this down below. Because look, like you said, Jesse, I think that's part of the reason he maybe came across as a bit hesitant talking about it, because he knows every word he says talking about that can be used by not only fans, not only media, but teams as well. Like you never really know, and fully understand that. But again, at the end of the day, the teams have the medical files. They're going to make the correct call. And at some point you got to take him because he has some of the best upside in this entire draft. And there's a chance that this injury goes away completely and never returns, right? So all in all, I'm still excited to see Cayden Lindstrom, no matter where he lands. And I kind of do hope it's Montreal to some extent. And I kind of hope he goes to Montreal and proves all the doubters wrong. Can you imagine that, Jesse? Montreal picks him. People are like, oh, look, they did it again. They made a risky pick. And then he just comes out and dominates. Wouldn't that feel so good?
It would, for sure. And we get where we're coming from. Like the nerve damage, that is a scary one, right? We've seen, back problems take out many a very good hockey player, right? But I think, with just all the sports science that there is today, like this guy's ready to go and he's going to be a force in the NHL.
I'm pumped to see what happens, no matter what it is, whether Montreal takes him or Seneca or Tige or Demidov. It doesn't matter because there's so many good prospects here. And I think part of that prospect pool being so deep is just allowing us to have so much fun as we head up to the draft, talking about all these crazy things. And we just don't even know what's going to happen until Bob McKenzie's list comes out next week, which is usually a very good predictor of what happens. I'm so excited for Bobby Margarita's list. But leave your thoughts down below about Cayden Lindstrom and this whole situation, because I'm sure you guys have some pretty crazy opinions. That'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like. My gosh, we asked for 800 yesterday. We absolutely smashed it. We're at the end of the video, so if you're still watching, let's try and get to 500 if you're still watching at this point in the video, because a lot fewer people are here. But if you see that number below 500, hit that like button now. We'd really, really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.